Hello and welcome to Top Shelf Board Games. I'm Hubba, and today we're learning how to play Ashes: Rise of the Phoenixborn. Let's get to the table and get you going. Alright, the object of Ashes is to reduce your opponent's Phoenixborn down to 0 life. Your Phoenixborn has the life total right in the middle. So in this case, Aradel Summerguard has 16 life. Her battlefield is 8 and her spellboard is 4. What that means is she can have 8 creatures in her battlefield area, which is out in front here. And then she can also have 4 on her spellboard. Over to your right is your spellboard where you will place your ready spells. And she can have a max of 4 cards over in this area. The starting piles, you have your Phoenixborn, you got your 30 cards of your starting deck. You have your discard pile, and then you have your conjuration pile. Your conjurations are separate because these are ones that will be summoned into play by using different spells from your spellboard. For instance, to summon Blue Jaguar, I can place a Blue Jaguar conjuration onto my battlefield. I would then take a Blue Jaguar from my conjuration pile and put it into play. And when a conjuration is defeated, it goes back to your conjuration pile, which allows it to be summoned at a later time. Whereas other figures that allies on your battlefield will return to your discard pile. Likewise, the cards have different abilities down here. For instance, she has Water Blast, and then there's various symbols that are needed to activate this ability. Once that ability has been activated, she will deal 2 damage to a target unit. It's important to note that a Phoenixborn is not considered a unit. So when you target a unit, you have to target one of the allies or conjurations that are in play in the battlefield. You cannot target your opponent's Phoenixborn when it says target a unit. Also, on cards, if we look over here at this card right here, there's a few more things that are noted on there. Up here in the top right corner is the cost to play this card down. Over the course of the game, we'll be playing various cards from your hand, and in order to do that, you have to pay the cost that's right here. This symbol is the main action symbol. On your turn, you have to take at least 1 main action, and you have the option of doing a side action. So that symbol is the main action. It requires your main action to do that. Likewise, you have to play a dice that has that symbol. To play this card down, you would use your main action. You would take the dice that matches the symbol and move it to the other side of your area. This would be your used dice over here, whereas these are your unused dice. You would then play this card. On your card, you'll look right here, and this tells you where this card is played at. So for instance, this one tells you to put your ready spell onto your spell board. So this card, when you play it, will go over here to your spell board. Whereas this ally, when you play your ally, it tells you to place it on your battlefield. So this ally would be placed to the battlefield. Okay, and that's how you play cards in this game. A side action symbol is shown right here. This little symbol is your side action symbol. And then you have various other symbols. Let's go over the other symbols. This other triangle symbol right here, that's your exhaustion counters. If you look at the exhaustion tokens, you would have to spend an exhaustion token and place it on top of this card. Also, you'd have to spend 1 leaf dice to activate this card. Once again, when you spend dice, you move it from your used or unused pile to your used pile. Then you'd be able to activate that ability. All right, let's go over the dice. There's 4 different types of dice. You have your charm dice, your illusion dice, your natural dice, and your ceremonial dice. Each dice has 3 faces on it. So you have your basic symbol, your class symbol, and your power symbol. Your basic symbol can only be used for a basic energy. The class energy can be used as either the class or a basic energy, and your power symbol can be used as the power symbol, the class symbol, or the basic symbol. And that's true for each different type of dice you're using. With that in mind, let's go over how the game plays. Each round is broken down into 3 phases. You have your prepare phase, your player turn phase, and your phase recovery. All right, before we start the prepare phase, you're going to choose 5 cards from your deck and place them into your hand. This will be your starting hand. Then we roll the dice. So let's go over the first thing, the prepare phase. The first thing you'll do is roll your dice. Once you've rolled your dice, for the very first round, you'll add up the total basic energy that is rolled, and whoever has the most will be the start player. Where I've rolled 2 and my opponent has only rolled 1, the start player will start with me, so we'll point the arrow towards me. The next spot of the prepare phase is to discard cards. If you don't like cards that are in your hand, you can discard them to your discard pile. Once you've done that, the third step of the prepare phase is to draw cards. You'll draw back up to 5 cards in your hand. And this phase is done simultaneously. Once you have 5 cards in your hand, you'll go to the player turn phase. The player turn phase, like I mentioned before, you have to do 1 main action and 1 side action. Your main actions are, there's 4 different main actions you can do. You can pay a main action cost, which is either playing a card from your hand that has the main action symbol, likewise paying the indicated amount, or you can use abilities that are on cards in play. For instance, this ready spell that's on my spell board requires a main action and an exhaustion token to be able to activate this ability. So that would be paying a main action cost for my main action. Another thing you can do is attack a Phoenixborn. When you attack a Phoenixborn, you'll choose units from your battlefield that do not have an exhausted token on it. For instance, my Blue Jaguar has an exhaustion token, so I cannot attack with him. When an exhaustion token is on a card, the card loses all of its abilities. It also cannot attack, it cannot block, nor can it guard opponent's attacks. So I would choose a card that I want to attack with. I'm going to choose my Leech Warrior, and then I'm going to say I'm going to attack my opponent's Phoenixborn. My opponent then has the opportunity to use his creatures to block my attacking ally. A creature from his side that is not exhausted, and place it in front of my guy. This guy will now be blocking my Leech Warrior. The opponent then has the opportunity to either just block. If my opponent chooses to only block, I will apply my damage, which is an attack of 2, to my opponent, and put 2 damage tokens on him. However, and then I would put an exhaustion token on my guy, and that would be the end of the attacking a Phoenixborn. He would block the damage that would go to the Phoenixborn. Likewise, my opponent could choose to counter. If my opponent chooses to counter, then these 2 units are considered to be in battle. They'll do their damage simultaneously. This one has an attack of 3 to my attack of 2. I would take 3 damage, whereas my opponent would take 2 damage. If both units are still alive, each unit is given an exhaustion counter. That battle is completed. That would be the end of my main action. I could then do a side action. Side actions and main actions can be done in any order you like. You can do a side action before you do your main action. Another main action that I can do is attack a unit. So instead of pushing my unit forward and saying that I'm going to attack my opponent's Phoenixborn, I could push my unit forward and target a specific unit. I could target this Rayward Knight. If I do that, my opponent, the combat is very much the same. However, my opponent can use his Phoenixborn to guard this unit. What that means is my damage will now be directed towards the Phoenixborn. And the Phoenixborn would take the amount of damage that my character does, and I would apply that damage to his Phoenixborn. Likewise, if there's a unit that has a unit guard ability, he may have that unit be the target of the attack instead of the Rayward Knight. So my opponent could take this Butterfly Monk, use the unit guard ability, and step in and take that damage. He would then be able to choose to counter. If he chooses to counter, he'll place an exhaustion marker on his figure and damage will be simultaneous. Or he can just block and absorb the damage and not place an exhaustion token on his character. The last main action that you can do is you can choose to pass. If you can't take any more main actions, or you just choose to not take any more main actions, you can pass. If at any time both players simultaneously pass, the round ends, and we go to the phase 3. But before we do that, let's go over some side actions. A side action I already covered briefly, but you can activate a side action, which is this symbol, and then pay any other resources needed to activate different abilities. The next thing you can do for a side action is you can meditate. When you meditate, you can discard cards from your hand, you can discard cards from your spell board, or you can discard cards from the top of your deck to your discard pile. Every time you do that, you get to take 1 dice for each card and turn it to the face of your choice. This allows you to mitigate some of that dice roll. The last thing you can do on your player turn is activate a dice power. If you notice on your reference cards, type of magic has a dice power listed at the bottom of it. It's a side action, and you spend the power dice of that type of magic to activate this ability. For instance, for a side action, I can spend my power dice and choose an ally in your discard pile. Add that ally to your hand, then deal damage equal to that ally's attack to your Phoenixborn. Once I do that, I would move my dice to the used dice pool, and that's the 3 side actions that you can take. Once both players have passed consecutively, we go to phase 3, which is the recovery phase. The recovery phase, the first thing you do is recover. If you look at your different characters down at the bottom here, some have a recover value. For instance, my Leech Warrior has a recover of 3. That means he can heal up to 3 health points each at the end of each round. Whereas my Blue Jaguar has a 0 recovery, so when he takes damage, he can't get rid of it. Once all figures have recovered, we then remove 1 exhaustion from every card that has an exhaustion in play. So the Blue Jaguar's exhaustion would go away. The one on my Phoenixborn would go away. And any exhaustion that were on any other cards would also be removed. Then we can choose to exhaust some of our dice. Over the course of the round, dice will be spent, but we might have dice that are left over. You can choose to take those dice and exhaust them, which allows you to re-roll them at the beginning of the next round. Once that is complete, we start a new phase. The player marker turns towards the next player to the left, and we go through the phases again. This time, we don't add up the basic. This time after we roll the dice, we don't add up the basic symbols to determine who the first player is. It just goes back and forth on who the first player is. And so we'd roll the dice, discard cards, draw cards, go to the player turns. We'd go back and forth doing a main action and optional side actions until one of the Phoenixborn has been defeated. Now, one thing to note during the draw card phase, if at any time you go to draw cards during the draw cards phase of the game, if you have to draw 3 cards, for instance, but you only have 1 left in your pile, you would have to draw 2 more cards, but because you can't, you would instead take 2 damage to your Phoenixborn. This is only true during the draw card phase of the prepare step of the game. Another thing to note is the difference between damage and wounds. Some cards allow you to do damage to a specific card. Damage can be blocked by cards, and different spells can block damage. However, there are some cards that allow you to place wounds directly onto a unit or a Phoenixborn. If you're able to place wounds onto a card and your opponent has a spell that can block damage, that damage cannot prevent the wounds. Wounds and damage are slightly different in that regard. But that is how you play Ashes, Rise of the Phoenixborn.